Black CEO was mocked with cake, but her revenge destroyed a $4 billion deal. The Black CEO entered the room with unwavering confidence, her presence commanding attention even before she spoke. She was the only woman of color in a sea of sharply dressed executives, and while some nodded in polite acknowledgement, others whispered behind her back, exchanging smirks that barely concealed their disdain. The atmosphere was tense, but nothing prepared her for the humiliating spectacle that awaited. A group of executives, convinced that their cruel sense of humor was harmless, had prepared a cake meant to mock her achievements rather than celebrate them. Cameras flashed as the cake was presented and the room erupted into forced laughter, the kind that cuts deeper than silence. They whispered jokes about her capabilities, and about the idea that someone like her could lead a company capable of handling billions in revenue. In that moment, she felt a surge of determination rise within her. She did not react outwardly, did not drop the cake or argue, but every smirk and every whisper was noted, every face memorized. What they failed to see was that beneath her calm exterior, a plan was already forming, a strategy to turn their arrogance and mockery into their ultimate downfall. Behind the scenes, she had quietly built alliances with international investors, industry leaders, and corporate strategists who respected skill and integrity over arrogance and entitlement. As the executives continued to mock, she began leveraging these connections, subtly signaling that the behavior of her rivals might be a risk to any potential partnership. Slowly, the ripple effects began. Rumors of the incident spread beyond the room, reaching the ears of stakeholders who had been considering the $4 billion deal, and instead of celebrating, they grew wary, questioning whether they could trust individuals who publicly disrespected a leader with proven expertise. The CEO, fully aware of the power of perception, allowed the incident to become a catalyst, letting the mockery amplify its impact, not through confrontation, but through calculated patience and observation. As negotiations progressed, the executives who had intended to humiliate her realized too late that they had underestimated her. Opportunities that had seemed within their grasp began slipping away as partners reconsidered their commitments, unwilling to align with arrogance disguised as humor. By the time the deal was meant to close, it had unraveled completely. Billions lost, reputations tarnished, and the executives left scrambling to comprehend how a simple act of mockery had turned into their catastrophic downfall. Meanwhile, the Black CEO stood firm, her dignity intact, her reputation stronger than ever, and the lesson clear. Respect and intelligence outweigh privilege and cruelty, and revenge, when executed through strategy and poise, is far more powerful than anger or retaliation. She stood silently, her calm smile masking the fire that burned fiercely inside her, a fire that no amount of ridicule could extinguish. The cake thrown in her face, meant to humiliate her in front of her peers, was not a trigger for anger but a spark for strategy. Every smirk, every whisper, every condescending glance was etched into her memory, each one a piece of evidence she would later use in ways her tormentors could never anticipate. She did not flinch, did not yell, and did not storm out of the room as others might have, because she understood that power was not displayed through immediate reaction, but through control and foresight. While the executives laughed, convinced of their dominance and superiority, she was quietly assessing the room, evaluating every personality, every alliance, every potential weakness, knowing that those who underestimated her would soon regret it. They believed they had the upper hand, that their jokes and mockery could destabilize her, but in reality, she had been maneuvering long before that moment, cultivating alliances behind closed doors, negotiating deals with precision, and preparing contingencies that would allow her to strike without warning. Each insult, each belittling comment fed into her plan, sharpening her focus and reinforcing her determination to turn the very humiliation into an instrument of her ultimate victory. She imagined the ripple effect of their arrogance, the way investors and partners would see their behavior and question their competence, the way confidence in their leadership would erode under scrutiny. She let the laughter wash over her, observing, learning, calculating, her mind working faster than any visible action could suggest. Every face that had dared to mock her became a data point in her strategy, a reminder that those who wield power carelessly often leave themselves exposed. And then, in that silent observation, a transformation occurred. The powerless facade they had tried to impose on her became the very stage on which she would perform her revenge. The executives' arrogance, their sense of entitlement, and their lack of foresight were all ingredients in the recipe for their downfall. A downfall that she would orchestrate without haste but with precise, unwavering intent. She envisioned how the deals they thought secure would slip through their fingers, how investors would question their judgment, and how confidence in their billion-dollar ambitions would crumble like the cake they had used to mock her. And yet, through it all, she remained composed. Her silence more commanding than any outburst, her calm more terrifying than any anger, because she understood that real power is invisible, strategic, and patient. By the time the consequences of their arrogance unfolded, it would be too late for them to recover, and she would emerge not only unscathed, but strengthened, proving that true authority does not shout. It observes, calculates, and acts with precision, turning mockery into opportunity and disrespect into a tool for irreversible triumph. Behind closed doors, the CEO began to put her plan into motion, her mind sharp, focused, and precise, aware that every decision she made in this moment would determine the outcome of a multi-billion-dollar deal. She had spent months, quietly, strategically, building alliances with international investors, technology leaders, and influential decision-makers who valued competence, integrity, and vision above arrogance and theatrics. These allies had been observing the corporate world from a distance, and when news of the humiliating cake incident reached them, their interest shifted from mere curiosity to concern. They were not impressed by the childish antics of the executives who had attempted to belittle her. Instead, they began questioning the judgment, professionalism, and capability of the men who had so openly mocked a proven leader in front of peers and media. The CEO recognized the power of perception, and she seized the moment with meticulous care, exposing not with anger but with subtle, undeniable evidence the arrogance, the short-sightedness, and the lack of leadership displayed by those who had thought themselves untouchable. She organized meetings, sent strategic communications, and allowed the narrative of disrespect to unfold naturally, knowing that in business, reputation is often the most valuable currency. Word of the incident spread quickly through networks of investors and companies that had once been eager to sign agreements with her rivals. Instead of celebrating their supposed dominance, these organizations paused, reconsidering their options, hesitant to risk their own reputations by partnering with executives who had publicly demonstrated a lack of maturity, foresight, and respect. Each interaction, each report, each subtle reminder of the executive's behavior reinforced her position, and she remained patient, allowing her opponents to underestimate the power of her restraint. While they celebrated what they believed was a minor victory, she was systematically turning their public humiliation into a business advantage, demonstrating that leadership is defined not by reactionary displays of emotion, but by strategic action and foresight. She communicated with investors in a calm, confident manner, highlighting her vision, her proven track record, and her commitment to professionalism, all while leaving the story of the executive's mockery intact in their minds. The contrast between her composure and their recklessness was stark, undeniable, and devastating to their credibility. By the time the ripple effects reached the broader industry, the foundations of the $4 billion deal were already weakening. Companies that had once been eager to commit began to withdraw or delay their agreements, wary of the risk that the executive's arrogance represented. Every move she had made was deliberate, every silence purposeful, every alliance a strategic asset, and through it all, she maintained an air of calm authority that made her rivals' behavior look foolish, short-sighted, and ultimately catastrophic. The stage was set for the downfall of those who had mocked her, and in orchestrating it, she demonstrated the full power of patience, intelligence, and quiet, calculated revenge. When the dust finally settled, the reality of what had happened was impossible for anyone to deny, and the consequences of the executive's arrogance became painfully clear. The $4 billion deal they had boasted about, The deal they believed was secured through their influence and charm, collapsed completely, crumbling like the cake they had once used to mock her, a symbol of their own folly. Every laugh, every whispered joke, every condescending glance they had directed at her now reflected back on them as a glaring testament to their short-sightedness. The black CEO, the woman they had tried to humiliate publicly, walked away not only with her dignity intact but with a position of power far stronger than it had ever been before. She did not need to shout, to raise her voice, or to act with anger because her strategy had been quiet, patient, and precise, and the results spoke for themselves. Investors and partners who had been watching carefully now recognized her foresight, her intelligence, and her ability to turn a moment of personal insult into a demonstration of unshakable professionalism and leadership. The executives' laughter had turned into silence, their confidence had dissolved into regret, and their billion-dollar ambitions, built on arrogance and disrespect, had begun to collapse around them, leaving them scrambling to salvage what little credibility remained. She had shown, through her actions rather than words, that true authority is not asserted through force or aggression, but earned through patience, strategy, and the careful orchestration of events to reveal the truth. Every move she had made, from observing the initial insult to quietly leveraging her alliances, had been calculated, and now the outcome was undeniable. The market, the investors, and the industry at large had taken notice of the stark contrast between her composure and their recklessness, and in that contrast lay the ultimate lesson. Respect is worth far more than money, and intelligence paired with patience can dismantle even the most carefully constructed empire. Her rivals had underestimated her, assuming that public humiliation would weaken her, but in reality, it had become the catalyst for her greatest victory. As she moved forward, every step was confident, every decision deliberate, and every glance from those who had once mocked her carried the weight of their realization that they had been outsmarted in the most elegant way possible. The world now recognized her not just as a capable CEO, but as a leader who could turn adversity into opportunity, insult into leverage, and humiliation into a demonstration of the true power of strategy and resilience. In the end, the executives who had once thought themselves untouchable were left to face the ruin of their ambitions, while she, unshaken, emerged stronger, proving that patience, foresight, and unwavering dignity are forces far more formidable than arrogance, mockery, or money, and that revenge, when delivered through intelligence and calm precision, is absolute and unforgettable.